Settings, general, hide, yes, general. Where is that? Mamma mia, it's hot. No. Savannah. Guess who got a bathrobe? Oh, yeah. I guess that you're there. I hope I didn't just become a spender. This is supposed to say hide. Sven, I'm so tired though. I'm just tired all these days. I don't know. I guess I just am trying to wake up early, which I did today, which is good given yesterday. And so the result is I'm probably understandably tired. After like the 4-hour call with Jemiah, I just texted Kyle quite a bit actually. Went to buy some stuff in town, came back, went on a little short night walk, and I'm just tired, like trying to get energy to stream and just feeling like, am I going to be clear-headed enough? I'm super foggy. But how do I get... Hide OBS. Where is it? How to make OBS hide OBS. Settings, general, hide OBS window from screen capture. No, Mac. Set the capture to display mode, check hide OBS from capture. General, hide OBS. I don't see it there. Appearance? No. Stream? No. Output? No. Video? Hotkeys? Accessibility? Advanced? Well, no one knows. Is it going? Okay. Beautiful. Right. Alex O'Connor, Craig Biddle was making the rounds. I watched a bit of it.
See where it goes.
Not most of it, I think.
Well, let's do this. The topic is morality, objective or subjective. And why don't you start? Why don't you just give a 5-ish minutes, whatever works, on what your basic view is and why you hold it to be subjective or whatever the technical terms are that you're going to employ.
Fine by me. The terms can be a bit confusing, I think, objective and subjective. I'm usually careful to clarify that I'm not really a moral subjectivist because...
Why does he have the camera only on him?
Subjectivism is a sort of theory of ethical truth that says things are true or false dependent on mental states. Things are true because you want them to be true or in some way dependent on your desires or values or something like this. I broadly subscribe to an ethical view called Emotivism, which doesn't quite say this. What it says is that ethical statements are expressions of emotion. So when you make an ethical statement, when you say that murder is wrong,
What is this?
you're expressing a kind of emotion. This is a view that's been popularly held by a number of people. It was, in the 20th century, most closely associated with A.J. Ayer and his philosophy of logical positivism, which has largely gone out of favor for being self-defeating and not capturing a lot of what philosophy is about. But I think that the emotivist part can
completely not set
be
up.
salvaged and remains a powerful critique to moral objectivism. To be clear, if you were to say murder is wrong, I think the best way of getting at what your metaethics is to translate that into a different phrase that doesn't use the word wrong and see what you're actually trying to say. So, murder is wrong, that might translate as something like, I don't like murder. That's not emotivism. That's moral subjectivism. Because to say I don't like murder is just to report a fact. It's just it's a true fact about my brain that I don't like murder. And so me saying murder is wrong, reporting that, would just be making a claim about my psychology. That's not what emotivism is.
Well,
Emotivism says that when you say murder is wrong, you are...
That's not necessarily moral subjectivism. That is certainly a reading on moral subjectivism. There's also this tendency across the board in a lot of thinkers. Jordan Peterson suffers from this especially, where critics of a certain worldview will take their reading of the worldview or why they think the worldview is incoherent, and then they'll explain the worldview as if that's what the defendants of it are trying to argue. So that was kind of confusingly said. But, Jordan Peterson is often criticized, for example, for his understanding of postmodernism, postmodern neo-Marxists, the postmodern neo-Marxists are blah, 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 blah. And there's possibly some legitimacy to that. I actually don't consider myself extremely knowledgeable, so I'm not going to comment for now. I do have some thoughts forming, some notes forming, but that will have to wait. So Jordan Peterson believes, or Nietzsche. You have Jordan Peterson's critique of Nietzsche. So Jordan Peterson says Nietzsche does not understand Christianity, and he says Nietzsche was ultimately wrong. He says Freud was ultimately wrong. He says the postmodernists, Derrida and Foucault, he says they have some fantastic points, but they're ultimately wrong. Now, what does he mean by this? He looks at the world, he sees what base reality is. He takes his kind of existentialist, pragmatist view that conscious experience and the perceptions of the human mind, however much we translate things in order to generate concept in our mind, and however much we translate actual, true, objective, say, information to produce something we can interact with and negotiate with. However much we translate it, he says still this emergent conscious experience, this phenomenology to existence, must be affirmed as real. In a way, this is, again, kind of me injecting my own thing, I would say it's the most verifiable, the only kind of directly knowable thing. This has been observed by the idealists, who say true knowledge can only really be had about this immediate conscious experience we are having, the seemingness of things. So we could be a butterfly's dream, as they say. We could be an illusion of an illusion. We can think that we're experiencing true free will, but... Oops, sorry. I got distracted. I'm still trying to figure out how this live stream thing works. Yeah, I think it's going, right? Can you guys hear the audio? Yes. Okay. So there's this tendency when Peterson says Foucault had many brilliant observations, like we see the world through narrative. Our minds, construct these concepts that aren't actually evident in objective reality themselves. But no, we look at a table, we look at a cup, and we see it as a cup because of how we've evolved, because we're evolved in this sort of gravity with this sort of spectrum of possible predators and prey and motion that produces, this kind of range of muscles and the relevant, hearing mechanism to hear the sorts of other beings that would be moving at our speed that we need to escape. Predators and prey all evolve according to the energy available in the earth, in the form of plants or sunlight or meat or whatever. And all of that is determined by, this flux of the tides and the moon and, how our solar system came to be, which is all determined by, in some fundamental way, the laws of the universe, mathematics say. So at the ground, base reality is mathematics, and then certain particles come into certain interaction to produce things like these conscious minds that then overlay the mathematics with all of this sensory stuff like color and the feeling of wistfulness and fear. And Peterson looks at that and he says, okay, the idealist looks at this and says, this is kind of the most directly verifiable thing. It's the thing we experience. Whatever our motivational structure, however it evolved mathematically, evolutionarily, this is what we experience and this is how we conceive of it. So he says when we tell these stories that have lasted for so long, they have to be recognized as holding something because the act of telling a story is the act of conceiving and of discussing conception. So when you're talking about however many thousands-year-old story, you're talking about a meme, sort of this truth that has been distilled through generations, and whatever form it has retained across all that time must be important in some way. So he says kind of our perceptual structure, for some reason, sees these stories as significant or sees these symbols as significant, and we should approach that with a lot of humility and respect. We should actually come to it with, okay, there's something about this that I don't understand. This is far grander than me, and if I come to it with humility and with openness, then I'll actually learn something about myself. And I think this is a fundamentally different approach than the skeptics' approach. Jordan Peterson and Alex O'Connor talked about this in their debate, where I think they made a good comparison to a chisel. It's probably been done a lot before. I don't know if they originated it, but Alex O'Connor and Jordan Peterson.
In the early church, there was a debate around the physicality of Jesus' resurrection.
Yes.
So the canonical tradition ends up stipulating that Jesus physically resurrects,
Yes.
and you must believe
Chisel.
that, otherwise
Yes.
you're a heretic.
Yeah, and
Where
that's
is it?
part of the
Skeptic. Skepticism should be in the service of something. Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's see.
and so and insofar as you're going to disagree with me, I'm pleased that you're exhausted from the flight, because that'll slow you
Oh,
down
hey,
and
Conrad.
that'll be helpful. So anyways,
What do you mean,
seriously,
new
thank
phone,
you for
new
coming.
days?
And, so let's start with this. Cosmic skeptic. Right. Okay. So how do you come up with the name? And
Is the
and-
audio good,
and
guys? Is my audio good?
Why
I have
the
the
conjunction and
screen capture like 13 decibels lower.
What do you
14
think the
decibels lower.
advantage is, if any, in relationship to the emphasis on skepticism?
I'll give you the official and the unofficial story. The official story is that cosmic sort of implies universe, space, big thinking, and skeptic sort of situates me within a tradition of people who are interested in interrogating their beliefs to their sort of fundamental.
Okay, I know I've been very chaotic in this intro, but I want to get to a certain point that is discussed in both the Craig Biddle debate and the Jordan Peterson debate, and more broadly is kind of this thing that's being interrogated in society nowadays. And you hear about this resurgence of the Christian worldview or Christian nationalism, and you hear this kind of longing, this hunger for, I would say, ritual and community and something direct and tangible and embodied. You know, we're so abstract because of digital, because of the vast, interconnected global sphere that I think a lot of us feel kind of divorced from something. Well, embodied is probably the right word. We evolved, say, to have all this layers of hormones and chemistry that feels conviction and euphoria with certain experiences, and we kind of developed a lot of traditions, a lot of rituals to engage in these experiences, and they were very slow changing for a long time. And then suddenly, there were various iterations, and you had the emergence of kind of grander, more overarching religions that would sort of unite tribes. Say, paganism could be roughly similar across the board. Maybe there's some tweaks depending on environment, depending on which natural elements are more powerful, which, strange quirks happen to have affected a certain group. But overall, you could say paganism could be similar across the board in terms of the things we represent are the powers, the emotions that kind of compel us and possess us. That's like the Greek gods, right? So the Greek gods are kind of, they're not moral arbiters necessarily. They are arbiters, quote, in a different sense, that these are the forces that inhabit us, and if we deal with them carelessly, or if we indulge in certain aspects of our nature carelessly, then they come to overpower us and possess us. So you have, say, paganism. I'll try to make this a little more coherent. Let's see. Livestream 1. Paganism across the board. Fairly similar. Icons or idols or gods represent unique powers or impulses that hold sway over us. This could be forces of nature, i.e. storm, fire, death, life, fertility, better, probably. And then, but they usually go hand in hand with something like, I don't know if emotion's quite the right word, but with something internal or human that must be contended with. This could be anger, lust. What are the... You always think of negative ones, which is interesting, which makes sense because it's the dangers that can end you. As Jordan Peterson says, there's 1,000 ways things can go wrong, but they can only really ever be so good in any given moment. Anger, lust, fear, say love, honor, blah, blah, blah. And you often see an early primal pantheon with representing very simplistic impulses and modes of being, say. Then it evolves to become somewhat more human. This is interesting. So there's a kind of an evolution that takes place. I was writing about this recently. I don't remember what I titled it. Evolution of religion? No. Mythological evolution? Mythology directory. On myth, legend, folklore. Evolution of religion? No. Symbolism, basic myth structures. Yeah, I was writing about this recently. I feel, this is very tentative, I'm not going to make any claims, but I feel, the audio is pretty good. Cool, thank you, Conrad. I don't know if you're still watching, because I don't know if this is your sort of thing. I'm probably overthinking everything. I feel like you can divide myth into these kind of basic categories. The primordial epic, which is kind of creation myths, the creation of the world we inhabit from something more primeval and nebulous. There's usually like a haze, a fog, a storm. This could be seen as chaos, like the undeclared or undivided, uncatalyzed, say, force out of which things can come. So it's like creative power, creative chaos. This is why the underworld, earth, sea, the dark hidden places are usually the origins for life and form, but then something needs to come from outside and kind of speak order into them. So primordial epic is like creation myths, cosmogonic myths, which is cosmic battles or struggles between primordial forces, perhaps concurrent with or identical to the creation myth. Maybe not necessarily. I need to think about that more. But then I kind of hurried on and thought, okay, there next seems to be kind of an epoch of gods and heroes. This could be divine myths, so some pantheon of gods and their nature becomes emergent. You have in the Greek these kind of different generations. You have at first these very primordial things like night and darkness and time. Is he first or second generation? I'm not sure. Greek mythology. Oh man, I don't actually know. I should know that. What's the best way to find this? How do you get the... Oh, yeah. So here we go. Origins of the world and their gods. So you have myths of origin or creation myths represent an attempt to explain the beginnings of the universe in human language, the most widely accepted version at the time, although a philosophical account of the beginning of things is reported by Hesiod in his Theogony. He begins with chaos. Okay, so just going with this Wikipedia surface level, we have, let's try to do basic mythic structure, Greek example. Basic mythic structure, Greek example. You have Chaos, Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros. That's interesting. Chaos, Gaia, Tartarus, Eros. Because you'd feel like some of those are a little bit more human than the others. Eros, specifically. Eros, I guess, could be seen as the impulse. Eros is the Greek god of love and sex. His Roman counterpart is Cupid, desire. Okay, so this is interesting. I wonder why he's so primordial. I mean, I don't think I'm going to answer it right now, but the fourth god to come into existence after Chaos, Gaia, and Tartarus. I wonder why Eros comes so early. Consider to research. Why does Eros come so early? But you have Chaos, Gaius, and Tartarus, which are very understandable. Tartarus being the deep abyss, the dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked, and as a prison for the Titans. So you have these very kind of primordial, you say chaos forces. That's kind of an overused term, but it's probably accurate. And then Gaia gives birth to Uranus, the sky, who then fertilized her, which we could research. From that union were born first the Titans, 6 males, Coeus, Creus, Cronus, Hyperion, Iapetus, and Oceanus. 6 females, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Rhea, Thea, Themis, and Tethys. Don't quote me on the pronunciation here. So these are... I'm trying to find some evidence of my theory here. Chronos is time. Anyway, so that's 2nd generation. So you have this primordial creation forces, and then you have the emergence of gods and heroes. So some pantheon of gods and their nature becomes emergent. This would be the Olympians in the Greek example. So you have things that actually represent... They're much more human, say. Things have begun to kind of attenuate towards... the societal concerns of man, the familial concerns of man, the concerns of education and wisdom and learning and music. So you have, Apollo and music and truth-telling and prophecy, and you have Artemis and the hunt, which could be, a little more connected to the wild. I don't remember what other things Artemis represents. But then you have Athena and wisdom. You have war. You have these forces that rise up within us and compel us. They're kind of like our impulses that we then have to negotiate with. So this is where the gods become a little bit more human, and we see that the human gods are overthrowing their less articulated parents, perhaps, and they often try to destroy their less articulated parents. They chop them up and throw them into Tartarus. So you have kind of more human gods that can be related to, that can be spoken and negotiated, bartered with, and then you have the mythical epoch. Oh, then you have the heroic myth. So man seeks to rise to the level of the god, is called, challenged perhaps by his ever greater wakefulness. This could be like Achilles, like Heracles, like Odysseus, like Perseus. Obviously, I have to do a lot more research on all of this, but research, heroes, test, theory, obviously, always. Mythical epoch. So the founding myths, this has to do with how does society actually emerge. So you have kind of relation to the fundamental forces of nature, consciousness probably then. And then you have heroic divine myths, relation to the fundamental forces of humanity and the sort of relations we have to form with each other, with nature. And then you have founding myths, founding of your civilization. So you have kind of how does Rome come about? This would probably be like Romulus and Remus. Again, this is all just a theory, but concurrent with or identical to heroic myths? ? I wrote. But then it stretches also later, perhaps closer to the true or verifiable known figures. Establishes this, so that would be like, yeah, Romulus and Remus. Could they have been real? Possibly. King Arthur. Establishes the story of the relevant civilization, its aims, its debts, its values. Institutions are ensconced and validated, but also tested and evolved. And this goes kind of hand in hand or leads into historical myths. As founding myths stretch closer to the present day, they become tangled up in ever more verifiable figures, eventually producing legends such as King Arthur, King David, Noah, Moses, Mahabharata and Ramayana, Roland and Oliver, Siegfried, and so on. Then you get ethical and moral myths, which I'm not sure if this is a chronological step after founding myths. I'm not sure this is actually related to kind of the what would the entire body of myths as relates to a civilization or its ethos be called? I don't know if it'd be called its... Surely it wouldn't be called its cosmology. Cosmogony. What is cosmogony? The branch of science that deals with the origins of the universe. The branch of science? What? Well, that's wrong. What is the body of myths as relates to a society's entire ethos? I don't know. I'm not sure that this kind of fits into the chronological pattern, this step-by-step evolution I'm trying to get. But ethical and moral myths could be seen as more like fables, like Aesop's fables. Probably emerged from just parent-child relationships largely. And probably religious person, i.e. priest, monk relations with commoner, but in a more probably organic way. I don't know. Moral tales. Not necessarily later, not chronological, not fundamentally culture or ontology-centric in the way we're discussing. As a society's ethical and philosophical thinking evolves, myths begin to incorporate moral lessons, explaining the consequences of virtue and vice. These stories reinforce social norms and guide behavior. Religious myths. Myths become the foundation of religious beliefs, rituals, and practices. This probably belongs earlier. Somewhat sacred narratives that are toyed with, tested, expanded, and yet the central core, a meme, a distillation of some useful truth, retains great elasticity, bouncing back into form to support the religious institutions and the moral codes of the society. This is, of course, a debatable and highly complex process, probably a natural selection of sorts, by which better or more resilient ideas are reinforced and layered upon, while others fragment, are tossed aside, evolve, are carried certain directions and not others, and so on and so on. That was a lot of clauses. Decline and eschatological myths. This is kind of, doomsaying and prophesying, reflecting the society's downfall. I hadn't thought about that much yet. But the idea is, after that long tangent, we have mathematics, say, in the universe, information, the language of the universe, particles in motion, cascading. Somehow, human brains emerge, this consciousness, this awareness. Now, in order to function, in order to retain the informational structure that is, say, our genetic code, you could posit the process of a natural selection. Now, any system that's going to retain itself as a system unique from its environment is going to have some sort of border. So this is like the DNA passed on, and not mixing with the rest of the world. So you have to have this system to support the DNA, say, metabolism, producing energy, sustaining this DNA's ability to reproduce. And, metabolism and all of that requires this cell for the DNA to do that, and the body with the border to be able to consume energy, reprocess it, funnel it in different directions. So the point is you get, say, like an amoeba, and then through billions and billions of whatever years, a shrew, a fish, whatever. The point is you get some sort of sensory apparatus, some sort of hands, ears, eyes, to take in the information of the universe and transform it into something that can be manipulated and interacted with in a more meta level. Because if you are an amoeba, you're just kind of reacting. There's one input and you do something. There's an input, output, input, output. You're very simple. So motor-wise, you don't have a neurology, but motor-wise, you're able to do very few things. You might react to light. You might react to heat. Heat is energy. Go towards it. Oh, too hot. Go away from it. That amoeba is going to survive better than an amoeba that just goes towards the heat without thinking. So it develops a little more sensitivity. Hot and also too hot. Gradations, a spectrum. And after a while, you get a spectrum in many different directions. You can discern between up and down, between hot and cold, between predator that's bigger than you, or a prey that's bigger than you and it might offer a lot of meat but doesn't pose a lot of danger because he has skinny legs. So he's a prey, he's going to run away from me, he's a scared little antelope or chicken or something. So you get spectrums of sensitivity along many different axes, and this produces the need to deal with more and more information, more and more possible paths of action at once. This is what they talk about when they say, Jordan Peterson probably had a good bit on this. Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, 3. I think he talked about sponges, right? Because sponges are very strange.
Cells to detect and cells to act.
Yeah, okay. So it's right there. Nice.
As the complexity of a biological organism increases, two things happen. The first thing that happens is that the sensory and motor cells differentiate. So now the organism has sensory cells and motor cells. So senses to detect and cells to detect and cells to act. Okay, so then it can detect more patterns because it's more sophisticated at the sensory perspective, and it can do more things because it has specialized motor systems. But then what happens is that as it gets even more complex, then it puts an intermediary structure of nervous tissue in there, and that structure increases in the number of layers of neurons. And what that means is that as that happens, and as the sensory cells become more specialized, and as the motor output cells become more specialized, Many more patterns can be detected. Those are roughly equivalent to facts.
Okay,
And
so
many
this is
more-
what I was trying to say when I was saying there's different spectrums of sensitivity along many different axes, and you become capable of more and more sort of possible paths of action in relation to your environment. So an amoeba can perhaps react according to heat, and that's it, or light. And I'm saying amoeba not because I have knowledge about amoebas, but because it's something we all associate as simple. I'm familiar with certain elements of this and not others, but it can react to perhaps heat and light, and that's it, or heat and light and motion, and that's it, or, and then size, and then all these things kind of evolve. And you get eyes that can detect color, eyes that can detect motion. Okay, certain colors we associate with ripeness or rot, certain smells, certain sounds we associate with fearsome, the fearsome thundering of the giant as he tromps towards our village, or cute, the mewing of a kitten that's kind of like, oh, wow, that's similar to a baby. I wonder if that's connected. And you feel empathy for it because it doesn't threaten you. So then it kind of allows this first layer of threat to dissolve, and you have this deeper layer of human care, which is so vital to our survival. And so you transmit it onto the kitten more so than you would a jumping spider, even though jumping spiders are very cute, more so than tarantulas. And it all has to do with the similarity of this organism to us. So as soon as the layer of threat is dissolved, you say activate or whatever, this bottom layer that's looking for similarity to map onto. So you have all these different kind of nodes of possible, or paths of possible action. The more complex you become, the more possible paths there are in relation to your environment. And this requires, maybe this is connected to what he's saying. This is a lot of what I'm doing, a lot of like armchair thought, which was what a lot of the guys did when natural selection was still in its early stages. And like Darwin, Nietzsche, and all of them were just theorizing, like, what could be the purpose of language? And they'd sit down and just kind of think about it, because we didn't have all the same brain knowledge and, empirical knowledge we have today. So... Thank you, Conrad. Wait, if I type here, does it not appear? If I type here, does it not appear? Am I, like, not signed in here? What's going on? I don't see the chats appearing here. I see them just on my phone. Bad example. Tarantulas are cuter. Tarantulas are not cuter. Tarantulas are not cuter than... Okay, it's true people have tarantulas as pets, but I feel like people have jumping spiders as pets, I'm sure. Tarantulas are probably cute in some forms because they have, like, fur, although that can also be yeesh. But there are some tarantulas that look like they have, like, big puppy eyes. But come on, Conrad, look at this jumping spider. Look at him. Where is he? Look at his eyes. Ah, that's... not a jumping spider, is it? That's a tarantula, yeah. Jumping spider, cute. Look at him. And they do this with their little palps, and it seems like they're like little hands, like we imagine that, like a raccoon or whatever. And they have these big shiny eyes, and then they move with like very articulate motions. No. I can give you a refund. Wait, Conrad, do you want to talk about, do you want to call and talk about movies or something? Because I feel like I'm kind of rambling about this and I don't know where I'm going. I told myself I would start streaming like at least an hour a day just to give myself a rule. It is fluffy. Yeah, jumping spiders are fluffy. Oh, you texted me about anime. We could talk about anime. We could talk about Scavenger's Reign. I want to see more if you have recommendations. Okay, yeah, we can call because I am rambling. Holy cow. I didn't even start the debate I was supposed to respond to. I forgot you really like spiders. No, I didn't forget, but I'm curious why you like tarantulas more than jumping spiders. I read this book, Children of Time or Children of Ruin. I think Children of Time is the first one by Adrian Tchaikovsky, about if jumping spiders became became hyper intelligent or sentient. The idea was there was this virus that's accidentally released on this planet. It was intended for monkeys, but it's released in spiders, and they evolve extremely quickly. It's just like a gimmick, a plot device to get them to be at the point where the story needs. And then they develop their own civilization. And this guy did so much research. Adrian Tchaikovsky, he's an insane researcher. He wrote a lot of good books, about bees, octopi, spiders. And it's basically the spiders have their whole civilization that deals with, it has certain similarities to the human civilization, but it's extremely different in terms of how they communicate because, they can't hear. They use their little palps. And the women, it's obviously matriarchal or whatever. The women, eat the men after mating. So, and then they have a lot more sensitivity to like chemicals. So they're able to like farm ants and control ants with chemicals. Beetles too, I think. And it's like this whole thing about how would humans communicate with these spiders? And then later he brings in octopi, and how would all these different species that think so differently communicate? Because they all have the capacity to be intelligent. Jumping spiders are supposed to be some of the smartest, especially miraculous considering their brain size. Like their brains go down into their... Wait, Conrad, how do I do this? Oh no. Hello?
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, Conrad. Do you know how I set this up on my computer? Because I'm on the phone right now.
On the phone. Gosh, I don't know. Didn't you spend like a whole amount of time yesterday trying to figure this out?
I tried streaming, and then by the time I got to Discord, I was kind of getting tired, and I never actually figured it out. And I didn't have anyone to try calling, and I didn't want to dox everyone and expose stuff, and I didn't know how Discord worked, and I still don't know how it works.
So you don't know how to live stream my voice then on Discord?
Right. Yeah. I don't even know if I have Discord. I do. Yeah, there it is. I'm just not paying attention. Like if I open it right now, will it...
You didn't know if you had Discord on your computer, then how were you trying to do this?
No, I had Discord on my computer, but I hang on, sorry, I'm pulling it up and I'm a little distracted. I had Discord on my computer. I just downloaded the app the other day, and I forgot if I actually downloaded it or not, but I did. Okay, so I swapped the OBS to just show me, so it's not showing my screen, and then I opened Discord, and it's verifying. Do you know why on the computer the chat is not appearing, but on my phone it is?
On YouTube?
Yeah.
I have never streamed, Jesse. I do not know this.
Okay. Man, it's kind of weird talking alone. I just ramble and get distracted.
Oh yeah, especially when you have like 3 viewers when I'm not here. And one of them's a fan.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna... maybe we can call again. Call me and I'll pick up on the computer.
Alright, yep.
All right. Streamer mode is enabled. Usernames have been truncated. Is that how it works? I don't know how this works. Wow. I feel like I should be better at this. Start video call, voice call. Hello? Hello? There's no audio. Oh, it's there. Haha. Wow. So is it working? Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, there's a delay. And it has the whatever thing where, like the noise gate where it cuts off. So, we were talking about anime and Scavenger's Reign and what defines real anime.
Yeah, I gave an elaborate answer. I mean, it's very black and white to say it's only animated projects that are made by Japanese creators, which is
Okay.
why there's a lot of confusion because, for example, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off was a anime. I believe it's an anime where it was made by Japanese animators, yet it's not. It was initially not regarded an anime because the creator of the story is American, so that's why they discredited it. But then something like
Ah.
Transformers episodes of the animated show would be considered anime because Japanese animators do it. And then, of course, like I said, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a very famous example of a Western project that is very heavily influenced by anime. Ruby is another
Okay.
example that's like heavily influenced to where you would might as well just call them anime, and some people do. I think
Okay.
that people in the West are more willing to call something anime or anime inspired.
Yeah.
Um, Even though, ironically, the term anime has just the word animation in Japan basically. So it's just kind of a strange concept, and it's just the fact that Japan has such a large culture towards creating animation that we have the discussion to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So basically, there's some element of whatever history or culture that originated in Japan and was like very strong. This is their storytelling style, or this they created like the best ones early, and for some reason, all the subsequent like whatever Brazilian, Russian, American anime creators wanted to model themselves after that. Is that like how it worked?
Not necessarily, especially since in terms of history, it wasn't until like post 2000s that Japan was liked by the masses. I don't know necessarily what time, but anime was really hated initially,
Oh.
unless it was like Dragon. And like even in modern day, anime is evidently hand drawn typically. And the labor being put into it is more high effort than American animation, which are
Ah,
other things of why they tend to
even
disregard. Go ahead.
even nowadays, it's typically hand drawn
For who?
in Japan.
Yeah, in Japan, it's common. I mean, so much so that when Ghibli made their first film, like with just CG, everyone hated it, including Hayao Miyazaki, who hated his son and said he was a disappointment and took back control of the studio. And I thought that was
Ah,
so brutally funny in a very morbid way.
I think you
So
told us
effed
about.
up.
Was that going on somewhat around the time we were in Ireland? Like we saw when Marnie was there, and you told
This
us.
this all predates. I mean, technically, it predates Ireland, right?
Okay,
Evidently, I forget
I
when
don't know.
the witch and the earwig. I forget what it's called
But he came
because I
back
think
for the Boy and the Heron. Is that true?
yeah, Secret of the Boy and the Heron. He initially retired, right, and then he was actually, ironically enough, he had a documentary made about him where he discovers CGI and was fiddling with it. And he made a little short animation with it with a worm.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's even more. That's a layered bit of irony because of the Earwig movie. But then he sees this film in 2020 is when it came out, Earwig and the Witch. Absolutely atrocious film. It's without film. He sees this